Hey folks, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, welcome. My name is Natasha and I do book things here. Just heads up, I got a new piece of furniture, which is what my tripod is sitting on. So if the angle is different, it's because my tripod's now up like 2 feet. So it feels a little MySpacey at this angle. Yes, I'm that old. Want to know your opinion. What is better? This is a mess, but I need to know your opinion. Zoomed in, doesn't look too bad, because look what happens if I zoom out. If I zoom out, you get all this. You guys want to see my freebie clothes, so this is Daddy freebie. Yeah, let's just tighten that up, shall we? Also, it's very bright outside, so if my eyeballs are watering this whole video, that's why, because it is nature. So as usual, I'm gonna pop in some graphs and stuff. So the month of February, I read 8 books total. The pages are 2,467, which is about 200 pages less than last month, but I read more books last month. I read 10 books. Around the same sort of page number. Average rating in total is less than January. So January's overall rating was a 4. This month was a 3.6. So I read a couple more things that I didn't care for. And then I read 3 books that were own voices. Moving on to my genres, I read 3 contemporary, 1 horror, 1 nonfiction, 2 poetry, and 1 thriller. This month, where it changes kind of from January, is that instead of more adult, I actually read more YA. So I read 3 adult books, 5 YA, whereas in January I read 7 adult, 3 YA. It'd be interesting to see if throughout the year, if in general I'm rating my YA books lower. We'll see. We'll see. We'll see. So then for identity, I have 3 books written by he, him, 4 by she, her, and 1 by they, them. So then for race, I read 2 books by Black authors, 1 by Latin author, and 5 by white authors. I definitely want to get that number more evenly matched continuing through the year. Right now it sits at about 50%. I'd like to keep it at about 50% for the rest of the year or higher. Publishing in general, it's about 95% to 5%, which is just ridiculous. So I definitely suggest taking a look at your shelves and seeing where you can add in some authors of color or have those be the books that you're bringing in, just so that you're talking about authors of color and getting their names out, because publishing isn't doing enough. So we need to do better. So then for author status, I had 4 books from authors that I've read before and 4 authors that were new to me. And then overall my ratings for the month goes as follows. So I had 2 5-star books, 1 4.5, 1 4, 3 3s, which is eh. And then I had 1 1.5, so I had a book that I didn't care for this month. So let's get into that. I start from my lowest rated book and move up to my 5 stars so that we end the video on a positive note. This one kind of sucks because this is actually my favorite cover of the year, I would say, or so far. I really like this cover, and I did not care for the content really at all. What Big Teeth. This is, again, like, this cover is beautiful. I don't know, there's something about this design, I just fell in love with it. I'll be honest, this is mostly a cover buy for me. I didn't really care what the book was about, and maybe I should have, because I think knowing the genre, knowing what I do and don't like about sort of YA paranormal / fantasy books, I probably wouldn't have picked this up. I think this is actually labeled as a horror in my categories, sort of a YA horror, but really this did nothing for me. So I mean, if I can even remember what the fuck it's about. So this follows Eleanor, which is actually my mom's name, so it's kind of weird to read like a family member's name in a book. Also, my mom's name, I feel like, is becoming more popular. Like, correct me if I'm wrong, but like I never heard of anyone with my mom's name, like the name Eleanor, especially with the exact same spelling, pretty much all my life. And then all of a sudden, I'd say in the last like 10 years, it's either authors or like new baby names or something where like Eleanor is getting this sort of revival, which is kind of neat. But anyway, that's my mom's name. So this book follows Eleanor, who basically is a werewolf, and her whole family comes from this line of werewolves. And I'll be honest, that's all I got to tell you, because I read this book, I finished it, and I couldn't really tell you what went down, anything that happened, anyone else in the story. pretty much anything else because it was written pretty poorly in my opinion. I don't often come on my channel and say this book was written poorly, but this one, it wasn't great. I don't even know how to describe it. There's no paragraph breaks, there's no scene changes, there's no chapter breaks to let you know, okay, like we've moved to a different scene, we've moved to a different room. It's a lot of telling and not showing, which I don't care for in books. I like slow burn, I like atmosphere, I like for you to describe every inch of like a speck of wallpaper in a left-hand corner in that room, right? So that I can picture myself. I got none of this. This was a lot of like, we're doing this, and then I did this, and then we're doing this, and then we're doing this, but it's all in a paragraph this big. And so we jumped around 8 spots in a paragraph this big. I don't know what's going on. I have no real backstory about the characters. I don't really have, I don't know, I don't remember anything I read about this other than they were they were werewolves. And so to me, that is a symbol. Even as I was reading it, I was forgetting what I was reading, like just not interested, I guess. So yeah, anyway, long story short, I gave this a 1.5. If any of you have read this book and you liked it, can you please tell me why? And I don't mean that in like an insulting way. I mean that genuinely, what did you get from it? Because I don't remember. And I'm kind of sad about it. Maybe if anything, I learned pure later? More freebies for me? If anything, I would like to know what other people thought. That's all. Tell me what you thought. I would like to know. I lost my thing. Great. Okay, so moving on. Now we're getting into 3-star books, and 3-star books are books that I thought were pretty good. They just didn't have, I would say average. 3 stars, well, 2.5 to me is an average book, which means I read it, it was fine, I didn't really get anything super enjoyable out of it. A 3 to me is more or less average with like some things that I enjoyed, but definitely not into the same level of 4 or 5s. Does that make sense? I feel like I have to explain my star ratings every wrap-up video I do, but it's just how it is. Again, cover, amazing. This is Fat Chance Charlie Vega by Crystal Maldonado. That's Joe Exotic's last name, I'm just gonna say. This one I picked up mostly for the plus size fat rep. I wanted to know what that was about. So this book was a really hard one for me YA wise because the character in this is a little bit older. I believe she's 17, and I was a very different 17-year-old than the one that's portrayed in this book. And what I mean by that is like, I was doing some things when I was like 14, 15, if you catch my drift, and doing many things with people. And this character is very much not that, which I always find really hard to relate. I understand that that's the case for some teenagers, that they're not as sexually explorative or advanced in that sort of way, but to read about, you know, I've never had my first kiss and this and that, it's like, in my mind it reads juvenile, but I just know that it feels like that because when I was that age, I was decades ahead of my peers. So, I mean, maybe that's just a me thing and not a book thing, but I found it hard to relate to the character in that sense, and so she read very young, even though, like I said, it's sort of a me thing to where I know that that's not every teenage experience. So, I'm gonna get that out of the way. But this follows Charlie, who is plus size and is dealing with, like, body image issues. One thing I will say, if you have at all a relationship with your family members' parents to where they ever made you feel bad about your body size, do not read this book. This book was triggering to me in that sense, and I don't even have a family member that's nearly as critical and mean as the mother in this story. The mother is straight up a bitch. Like, I mean, we're talking capital B, capital C-U-N-T, like, she's just one of the worst things I've read in a book that I've read to where like my heart physically hurt for the character, like hurt for the character, just because her mom is just rude and mean, and there was no real resolution for that. Like, there's not really a spoiler, but it's just, I'm not even getting into the romance side of this, which is, there's some of that in here, but in terms of like the relationship with her mother, which is what I tended to focus on in the book, there's no real resolution to that. It was just like, yeah, moving on, my mom's a bitch, go to be a bitch. And it's just, I don't know, it was just hard to read. So I thought it was cute, I thought it was nice. I feel like this could be really impactful for people who can relate to it. I just couldn't relate to a lot of the parts of this because I was just, I don't know, not that particular type of teenager, which is a little tricky for me to suspend my disbelief. And I don't know, I guess what this boils down to is the fact that I really do rate highly books that I can picture myself in or that I can relate to, and this just wasn't one of them, though it was really good. So I gave it a 3. I hope that's okay. I liked it. I think it's really going to work well for some other people, but definitely if you were ever a child who was ever criticized for their weight by their parents, tread lightly with this one, because this one is upsetting. By the way, I forgot to mention, these 3 were pre-orders for me. So this is a 2021 release. This is a 2021 release as well. And so is this one. Love is a Revolution. I think that this one actually would probably move up to about a 3.5. I think I like this a little bit better than Charlie Vega. But this is a story that follows Nala, and she meets through her sister's sort of activism group, like youth activism group. She meets this boy and she really likes him, but she sort of lies to him about everything that she's about and sort of puts on this sort of fake persona to sort of impress this boy. There's more to it than that too. There's a lot of other little dynamics in this book that I really liked as a whole. It really sort of give a good idea of the family and like that dynamic relationship with her sister, and also this new relationship with the boy that she liked. I don't know, it was one of those ones that was sort of hard to read. Again, I feel like as a 32-year-old, I'm sort of moving away from YA a little bit. It's becoming harder and harder for me to relate to that age range. Wow, I sound like a fucking old boomer, but it's just true. I find it harder to relate. As much as I want to stay, you know, current in what the kids are doing these days, it's getting harder and harder for me to read about teenage stories because I'm so far removed from my high school experience. However, one thing that I did really like in this book was that sort of process that she went through with telling these lies and sort of getting caught up in it, because I did some of that as a teenager. I don't know about y'all, but I definitely faked things about my personality so that people would like me. I feel like that's something we all kind of did. I did it a lot, maybe not to the extent that she did in this book, but I did it enough to where I read this and kind of cringed, because you sort of don't know who you are and you don't feel confident enough in yourself yet to be 100% of yourself and hope that someone else likes you for you. So reading through that was a little bit uncomfortable, but overall I liked it. It was pretty cute. Had some really good messages in there as well. And I really liked the relationship that she had with her grandmother and her grandmother's friends. I thought that was particularly delightful. But yeah, that's sort of a reminder that if you still have grandparents and you still talk to them, to send them a message, especially in the pandemic. See how they're doing, get them to tell you stories, because it's one thing that I always wish I could do more of, was to go back and talk to my grandparents more. So anytime that I read stuff like that, I sort of get like misty, because I'm like, oh man, I wish I would have asked them about the Navy. I wish I would have known Grandpa's Navy stories, because I don't. Like, so that's a reminder to talk to grandparents if you have them. So anyway, that's fucking depressing. Let's move on, because now I'm crying. My next 3-star book is a poetry collection. This is sexy poetry. Oh, this is Smoke and Mirrors by Michael Faude. I'm assuming that's Faude. I'm assuming it's Faude. This is a collection of poetry. I've read a couple things by him before. It's very sexually provocative, definitely adult poetry. He does not hold back from descriptive sexual activity. So if that's not something that you like to read about, maybe don't. But on the other hand, if you're looking to spend alone time and read some sexy poetry, like this one is just simple. This is just a couple lines. It's called Damaged Goods. Do we not enter this world a little broken? Damaged goods with awkward smiles, searching for the glue we call love. Is that not true? Why I gave this a 3 is because, and this is gonna sound maybe bad, this poetry when it's not good, it's very pretentious, and it's pretentious in the way that Lana Del Rey is pretentious. Now, don't get me wrong, I rated Lana Del Rey's poetry some of my favorite, but I just like her level of pretentious, right? So the second you put it into a white male's voice, it's just like that next level of like, like, I don't know, it's a little cringy, some of it, which is why I gave it a 3. So for me, his writing either works for me, and it really works, or it's like the most pretentious shit I've ever read. And it's like every guy I ever went to art school with. Will I pick up other poems, other poetry collections by him? Yes. Because like I said, the ones that work really, really work. However, I will talk about the difference between this poetry collection and one that I rated 5 stars in a second. Okay, moving on to the nonfiction of the month. I listened to this in audiobook format, which was definitely great. I was doing other stuff. February was a month that I went on a personal journey of a manic episode that resulted in me buying like 40 Furbies on eBay. So at no point during the month was I ever focused on anything but that. And so this was what I had going on in my ear holes, audiobook wise, while I was spiraling into a weird hole. Take that for what you will. But this is a book that was in my cart of books that I wanted to read in 2021, so I finally got around to reading one of them, which I'm like, ooh, finally. This is Cannibalism by Bill Schutt, and this is a perfectly natural history of cannibalism. And I thought this was really fun to read about. Like, I know it seems kind of weird, a weird nonfiction to pick up, but the truth of the matter is that I know a lot about cannibalism. I'm a true crime fan, so I know a lot about that side. I know a lot about the sort of media portrayal of cannibalism. Also very interested in the I'm not going to name celebrity names, but the current celebrity who may or may not be Arm & Hammer, who may or may not be a cannibal. Very interested in sort of like the human side of it. This more focuses on the animal side of cannibalism and sort of how it came to be, sort of just like the history side of it. And so if you want something that feels a little bit podcasty, but you also want just some general cannibalism information, this is a good one. I gave it a 4. Sort of all over the place, from anywhere from tadpoles to why, you know, different animals eat their young, and I don't know. It felt like a podcast to just listen to, and I listened to it really fast. So I definitely suggest, for any nonfiction that might feel a little bit like history textbooky, see if you can find the audio, because if you're a person who listens to podcasts like I do, you might really enjoy that. Some good information, things that I can just sort of pocket into my rotary wheel of Jeopardy trivia. That was fun. In like the most fun that history about cannibalism can be fun. I don't know. This one might be an interesting take, because a lot of people that I know that have read this did not like this book. However, I really liked it. Gave it a 4.5. That is The Project by Courtney Summers. Now, I could talk about this book for a while. This book was pitched to me as, this is about a cult. Already, I'm in. Courtney Summers wrote Sadie, which I really like. So I know that she has the ability to sort of do a lot of research into sort of like a true crime almost side of things, because Sadie had a little bit of that. And I knew that the main character was sort of going to this cult in order to find her sister, and that's all that I knew. What I found in this is the kind of cult novel that I've always been looking for. I feel like a lot of the lower ratings for this book is going to come from the expectation of what you wanted from a cult novel. And while everybody's star rating is valid, I definitely understand what people were looking for in this book and what didn't work for them, and then why it worked for me. So let me try to explain it without too many spoilers. A lot of cult books, I feel like, focus on what we see in the media. So take a cult like NXIVM, for example, which is a pretty recent one. I feel like a lot of what people want from a cult book is sort of that, how do you get into it? How did the leader come to be? How the media sort of portrays the extreme version of cults, which is, oh my god, how did we get to this point? You know, how did Jonestown come to be? How did, you know, the Branch Davidians come to be? Like, how did Heaven's Gate come to be? We always hear about the end goal. We always hear about that end catastrophe of how the media knows about it. And I feel like a lot of the times when people are looking for a cult book, they want that sort of sensationalized media aspect of it, when in reality, I know all about that. That is the media that I've consumed. That is the articles I've read, the true crime stuff, the podcast I've listened to, you know, the documentaries that I've watched. I know all of that. And quite frankly, I don't care anymore. I am so almost sick of reading about cults in the sense of this is how the leader is persuading people, as opposed to what is the day-to-day? What is the day-to-day? What is the simple conversations had between two people or a group of people, to where that person is sort of going, okay, like, I know I'm smarter than this, but I feel like a lot of us read cult books to see if we would then be in a cult. Am I wrong in that? Like, leave that in the comments below. Because a lot of the times the media tells you, hey, here's this crazy cult, and you go, oh, I'd never be in that. Let me read the book about it so that I can almost make fun of the people or feel smarter than the people who are brought into it. However, that brings me to this. Now, obviously, there's sort of a thriller aspect to this as well, and a mystery aspect to this, which I thought was intertwined very well. This one leans more towards the religious cult side, but the subtlety, the day-to-day, the overall manipulation on so many levels, and not just this sort of captivating leader. Don't get me wrong, there is still a captivating leader in this, but even that, it's the layers. It's who is the leader talking to? Who does the leader work with? How is it portrayed so to bring people in? Oh, they have this resource and this resource and this resource, and people know about them, and Vice knows about them, and companies know about them. They're well talked about in the media. How are they still bringing people in when you know what they're about? And that is what this touches on. It touches on the subtleties and the thoughts of someone who even knows how bad they could be, still will get roped into feeling protected by them. This is the slow burn cult book, never thought I'd say that I've sort of always wanted. I want more books like this, to be totally honest. The reason why it's not a 5 is because, I don't know, it still feels a little gimmicky to me, a little bit sort of like hook, like it's a popular subject right now, so I feel like it's a little bit of a hook, it's a little bit of a play. I definitely feel like Courtney Summers 100% did their research in how the little conversations can come to be. And yeah, this is honestly more horrifying than a straight up book about this is an evil cult guy, woo, you know. It felt more unsettling to me, and so I really liked it, and I gave it a 4.5. Definitely look up some trigger warnings for this if you know anything about cults, if you were ever in one, if you have a sensitivity to religion especially, be sure to be mindful of that. I grew up Pentecostal Christian, which is it borders into some questionable religious tones, and so I'm obviously not in that anymore, but some of that can mirror that, and it can be a little unsettling to read. So I would say if you know people or know of or have been, like, you know, a victim of a cult, or you've escaped that sort of scenario before, just tread lightly with that one, because obviously it's going to be upsetting for you to read. So yeah, just be careful with that one. We're going to talk about the 2 5-star books that I read, ones that I really liked. The first one that I have here is Ramona Blue by Julie Murphy. Wow, okay, I really like this. This is more my kind of teenager book, a little bit more adventurous, explorative, a little bit more out there, quirky. That's, I'm not gonna lie here for a second, I was definitely more of a manic pixie dream girl teenager, obviously, and so any of that I do kind of relate to, which is why like I went through a John Green phase. I was like, this is the best book I've ever read, because it was something I could relate to. Just the sort of, you know, blue hair, being a little quirky and having, I don't know, I liked it, okay? I liked the atmosphere, I liked the whole character, the whole family. This is very much a story about Ramona exploring her sexuality as much as it is about family and friends and community. It's just a good book, okay? I cried at parts, you know, I don't know. I really liked it. It's a little bit about how to get out of a small town too. It's good. It's really good. She's a teenager who doesn't really know her label yet. She's like, okay, I like girls, but I like this guy. Do I like girls still? Do I like this guy? Am I pansexual? Am I anything? I don't know. And it was just really sort of refreshing to read. This is something that I would have liked as a teenager. And then lastly, my, I would say maybe top 5-star book of the month is this very short little poetry collection. This is Helium by Rudy Francisco, and this is such a good poetry collection. I would say if you're going to check out one book out of all of this stuff that I've read, do pick this up, because this is, oh my god, fantastic. 98 pages, and there's poems in this that I will go back to and I will read, that I will cry. I almost don't even want to read one. I'm not going to read one, but I am going to tell you ones to read. There's one poem in here that I read to Jeff, and I was just like, oh my god, like this poem like changed me. This is called To the Man Standing on the Corner Holding the Sign That Says God Hates Gays, and it sort of talks about, I don't even want to read it, but like part of it is just, just read that poem, because if I read it you won't buy this book, and you should buy this book. Chameleon is another really good one in here. This one upset me, so I will read you this one. It's called When People Ask How I'm Doing. I want to say, my depression is an angry deity, a jealous god, a thirsty shadow that wrings my joy like a dish rag and makes juice out of my smile. I want to say, getting out of bed has become a magic trick. I'm probably the worst magician I know. I want to say, the sadness is the only clean shirt I have left, and my washing machine had been broken for months. But I'd rather not ruin someone's day with my tragic honesty, so instead I treat my face like a pumpkin. I pretend that it's Halloween, I carve it into something acceptable, I laugh and I say, I'm doing alright. Ooh, I read that and cried about it for like an hour. And so that's the difference, really, between good poetry and decent poetry. I'm just gonna say, if you can read a poem that hits you so hard you feel something. I feel like poetry for me, a good poetry is, I read something that explains my feelings better than I ever could explain it, and it's gonna sit with me for a real long time, like deep in my chest. That is good poetry, and this is probably the best poetry I've read maybe ever. Like, it's up there. It's really, really up there. So I, again, suggest Helium by Rudy Francisco. Fantastic. I'm pretty sure you can also watch them perform poetry as well on YouTube. I'm sure if you Google the name, I think some of them are up, because I've seen some of them on TikTok, actually, which is weird, but yeah. There's also some really hard poems in here too. Don't think that they're not hard. Not like the one I read you isn't hard, but some of them are very, very hard. Yeah, anyway, I love this. Those are all the books that I read in the month of February. Let me know in the comments down below what was some of your favorite books. Have you read any of the ones that I read? Did you rate them differently than me? I don't know. Leave anything down below. We'll talk about it. And yeah, I hope everyone is doing well, and I will talk to you guys soon.